All right, so today we're going to be doing something a little different. I often get asked about what I think the best classes are, the best decks. There's a lot that goes into it. How do you even really gauge it? Where are you at on the ladder? What kinds of matchups are you facing? But I wanted to take a crack at an actual definitive tier list. Thought it'd be fun to actually see, okay, what do I think the best classes are kind of in order, and piss off some people on the internet in the process, I'm sure. So, first of all, what is the criteria for how I'm doing this list? Because, yeah, you could break it down in so many different ways. There's classes that are more versatile than others, but my criteria for this is what do I think gives you the best chances of hitting rank 1 on ladder, all right? Rank 1 legend on ladder. So there's plenty of stuff that'll get you to legend, but it's an entirely different story as to what gets you to that first place victory. So we're going to be starting at the bottom, working our way up, and I think everyone's expecting, but going to be surprised. You think it's priest, but it's Demon Hunter. Standard, terrible. It's Demon Hunter. Fooled you. But for real, at the bottom, we got Priest. I think, no surprise, there's basically next to a 0% chance. I think I've actually heard that somebody did make it to rank 1 at some point with this like shadow form Priest. But in general, easy to see why this is the lowest ranked class. If you try to make a more balanced priest, usually you're going to get something in that control variety, right? You got like the Akanai Circle, Injured Blade Master, Northshire Cleric that goes into, Holy Nova, and some of the bigger stuff, maybe Sylvanas, a Reg, and Alex, whatever it is. And it just performs worse than other control decks that try to do the same thing. It can fend off Zoo decently well, but you're going to lose most of your control matchups. You're not going to do great against mid-range. Anything with 4 attack is just an absolute nightmare if you're a priest, right? A Sunwalker, a Yeti. It's an absolute disaster. I actually think the way to play priest is probably to lean into one of those matchups. You either say, I'm going to build it to be very good at countering something like Zoo. It's just entirely anti-aggro, and then you can have a good matchup if you're kind of in that pocket of the meta or that place during the climb. We'll see what happens with bots now that reporting has been added to the game. But as of now, today, the time that I'm recording, still tons of Zoo bots, and this could actually rank you up doing something like that. Or you go super greedy and just try to like mind control a bunch of minions, plop down a Ysera, be real annoying on that high end, and just go ahead and lose all your aggro mashups. So yeah, Priest, I think no surprise at the bottom here. But just above that, I've actually got Warrior here. Now Warrior, I think it's good. It's quite good. I'm sad that it's this low, but we're talking about getting rank 1. It's a very balanced deck. Control Warrior for sure is the best archetype that comes from the class. You can build it in a number of different ways, which is cool. You can tech it to be more anti-aggro, boost your Zoo win rate. Or you can, do things like put a Harrison in, double up on BGH if you really want. The Black Knight against Druid, there's a lot of flexibility in how you play it, but generally speaking, the reason why it's so difficult to hit rank 1 on ladder is you're going to be facing a ton of Miracle Rogues and a ton of Combo Druid, and both of those matchups are going to be a struggle for this deck. You're not really going to consistently win those matchups again and again. You can do certain things, again, to boost them, so the Black Knight and Tink Master, both reasonable tools for dealing with both of those. Korkrons to take out Azure Drakes, which are popular in both decks. But still, I think you're very, very unlikely to actually have a very high win rate. To end up rank 1, I think is very, very unlikely. As cool as Warrior is, as much as I love it, just not being good against those really popular decks you're going to see at High Legend. That's what's got it in this double F tier. Right above that, we go Paladin. Now, Paladin, I will say, it's got a chance, okay? It's got the slimmest of chances, and I say that because I think probably the best Paladin list I've seen has got to be Crusher's mid-range Paladin. He's a very skilled player, very skilled deck builder, and that list actually does good against Druid, which you see a lot of, and it's okay in other matchups. You're getting decent win rates as long as you're playing pretty well. It's not quite where I think it needs to be. I've seen Crusher play it for sure in the double digits of Legend. I think, whatever you want to say, low, high, double digits, 20s, something like that. And maybe it makes me think there's a possibility of some tweaks to that list or something in just the right perfect circumstances that could get you there to rank 1. Just to touch it, you're probably not going to hold it. But I really don't know what that would look like. As far as the other archetypes go, Shockedin or Aggro Paladin, Control Paladin, I actually think they're like reasonably good decks. A little bit underrated. You don't see them too much. And I really actually think Control Paladin is better than people give it credit for. But is it good enough to hit that rank 1? I don't think so. I would not recommend you try to make the climb with those. I think if you're going to do it, start from that base of Crusher's mid-range Paladin. See if there's something there. At least you can, use a quality to great success against Druid. And those kind of mid-range bodies are just a bit difficult to deal with. So that's where I've got it. Now, just above Paladin, try to not give too much of a sneak peek for the next one. I got Mage. So this is where I start to think, okay, it's possible. Once we get to this D tier, it is possible to hit rank 1 Legend with Mage. It's probably some kind of freeze Mage with or without Giants, I think is a bit of a question. I've heard some people be like, hey, I love the Giant variety. It improves certain win rates. In my personal experience, I think just the standard freeze Mage is a bit better. But it's very, very good against Miracle Rogue. And so if that's a lot of what you're facing, you've got an opportunity to go on a really nice win streak and, potentially go up and touch that rank 1. I think the more you play the deck, though, probably the higher chance that your win rates equalize over time and you lose that rank 1 spot. Because you're unfavored against combo Druid. You're extremely unfavored if you ever run into a control warrior. It's just very, very polarizing matchups, right? And of course, in a set of random numbers, you're going to have these bursts that are very, very favorable. Having a volatile win rate like that. And that's what I think could get you to that rank 1. But on average, I think if you play a high number of games with Mage, not going to be the greatest list to hit rank 1 with. I also don't think any of the other archetypes are likely to get you there. There's some reasonably good ones. You can play Aggro Mage, you can play like a Tempo Mage, but they all struggle against something. Tempo struggles a lot against Zoo. Aggro Mage, it's going to fall flat again against Warrior. I don't even think it's great against things like Druid. Playable, but really not likely to get you to rank 1. Now this is where I think we're going to, fortunately, piss off the internet. This is what I like. I've got Druid at C. Now you're probably thinking, this is insane. Druid's everywhere. It's all over ladder. It's at the top of the ladder. It's at the middle of the ladder. It's at the bottom of the ladder. That's why I think it's not the best to get to rank 1. See, what you're mostly going to be facing is Miracle Rogue and Druid. And the thing is, if you're facing an equally skilled Druid player, a combo Druid player, it is such a coin flip. It is not a matchup where the better player often gets to demonstrate their skill. There's so much variability between drawing the combo, drawing your innervates, your wild growth to be able to ramp, that so much of the game is just out of your hands. It's also not a incredibly high skill cap deck to begin with. It's very, very accessible. you can steal wins by, just getting that early ramp into combo. If you've secured the board, there's not a lot of opportunity for a skillful player to swing it back in their favor. So if you have 100 druids, they're around, say they're around rank 20 legend to 120 legend. Probably out of those 100, there's like 80 or 90 druid players, I feel like. And they're going to be down at that 20 for sure. They're going to be there. But in that jumble, how different are the skill levels of those players? Probably not all that much different. And I think the players who just play more will tend to gravitate towards the top of the ladder. Sure, over time, your skill will slightly eke you ahead. But because you're facing that mirror matchup so often, you're going to lose a lot of games over time unless you get a very lucky stretch that you shouldn't lose to worse players. And then you're going to lose in unfavorable matchups when you get them. So I think what you actually want to do to hit rank 1 is actually to counter Druid, because it's, I think, by far the most popular deck until you get right up into that kind of top 10, top 20, where it's going to be more and more Miracle Rogue. Now, all that also comes down to when you're playing, like time-wise, and what server you're on. Because there's going to be some people who are able to have a pocket of like only Druid players or only Rogue players during the time that they tend to play, right? There's not a ton of players on the classic ladder. And so it actually is going to come down to what are the individual players that you keep facing. But I don't think it's Druid, despite it being such a powerful deck in a vacuum. It's very good, but I don't think it's the best way to get to rank 1. Actually, above that, I'm going Warlock. Now, there's two very strong Warlock decks, no surprise, Zoo and Handlock. I really think Zoo is underrated. It gets a bad rap because it's annoying as hell to play against, and there's a ton of bots, so it becomes even more annoying. And I think people see players who are new to the game or not very experienced pilot the deck, and they think, oh, it doesn't look very good. They see bots pilot it, doesn't look very good. If you watch skilled players, like watch the tournaments that we've hosted, watch those people play Zoo, or get up around that like top 10, top 20 on ladder and run into a Zoo player that knows what they're doing, it's actually tough as hell to beat them, and it's favored against Druid. So it's reasonably safe, I think, to say that if you play in that kind of pocket, you're seeing a lot of Druid players, that you could climb higher with Zoo than you could with Druid. At least you'll get a chance to showcase your skill. It's not a mirror matchup, so it's not as draw dependent, but it's a super consistent deck. With all that being said, I think chances are Handlock is a better way to get you to rank 1. For sure, people touch rank 1 Legend with Zoo, but they don't often keep it. You get it early in the season, you get it at some point midway through the season, but the longer you play it, the more I think your win rate, is going to kind of equalize, though it can equalize pretty high. But Handlock, even though it's got some unfavorable matchups, such as Druid, but that does come down to a bit of how the Druid constructs their deck. They can do stuff like run double BGH, and if they're seeing you a lot on ladder because of that small classic pool, they're probably going to start teching things like double BGH against you, and that's really going to hurt your win rate in that matchup. But if you're a really skilled Handlock player, right, to hit rank 1, you've got to be a skilled player. You actually have an opportunity to showcase that skill. And even though it's a generally unfavorable matchup, I think across the board, if you look at all of Legend, all ranks, any kind of report where you can dig up the data for it, sure. But a very skilled player has so many opportunities with a deck like that. There's a lot of lines to consider. You can even construct the deck in certain ways that are going to help in those unfavorable matchups like Druid. I think you will get an opportunity to showcase that skill and potentially hit rank 1. On top of that, it counters Miracle Rogue. Now, Miracle Rogue, it's a great deck, but Handlock has I would say a substantially higher than 50% win rate. It's still in the 50s, I'm sure, but against Miracle Rogue players. So if you're an especially skilled Handlock player, you can maybe keep that Druid win rate just under 50%, but maybe be 56, 58%, something like that against Miracle Rogue. And it's good against a lot of other stuff you're going to be facing. You know, hopefully you're not hitting a Freeze Mage or something like that. I think it could do very, very well. Get you to rank 1 and potentially even have the ability to hold it to the end of the season. And above that, I think you already know what's missing. Going to be a big surprise recommendation here. I've got tied here Hunter and Shaman. Now, if you spend any time in the Classic Discord, you see when people are hitting rank 1, they're often posting it, you know, sharing their lists. I've seen it both from Shaman and Hunter, two classes that I think are highly, highly underrated in Classic. But what they do is they have the ability to counter the best decks in the game. So Hunter, I think its biggest obstacle is Druid, but it can counter Miracle Rogue. It could do very well against Handlock. It could do very well against Zoo. What we're seeing right now from Hunter is an emergence of Trap Hunter. Pay attention to what Crusher does. Dallin brought a kind of variation on that Trap Hunter, bit of a mix from the Control Hunter that I've played on stream. I called it like a hybrid Hunter when I had given it a go. What we're seeing is that kind of trap, hybrid, control-y, mid-range, I don't know what the hell to call it, archetype. We're seeing it evolve. We're seeing it get tightened up. And people have hit rank 1 with it. They've had some extremely high win rates across a lot of different matchups. It's something where I still struggle to say what the exact matchups are. You know, Druid is the hardest one, but I can still see a lot of those lists being around 50%. You know, Deadly Shot and Freezing Trap are extremely effective tools at dealing with Druid. Hunter's Mark as well on those big minions. They've got the ability to draw a lot. You know, Gladiator's Longbow suddenly becoming pretty prominent. You can whoop up on these mid-sized to big minions without taking damage in a class that generally lacks a lot of heal. There's a lot to be said about Hunter. I don't think it's perfected, but I think you can absolutely get to rank 1. Putting in things like Snipe are great against those concealed gadget sands. Deadly Shot, once again, you're going to be able to shoot them. And then you can push a reasonable amount of damage with your weapons, whether it's Eaglehorn Bow, right at the end with Gladiator's Longbow, and a lot of these lists are running Kill Command as well, a way to deal damage through taunts or kind of get that burst against a Miracle Rogue before they're able to, you know, draw their crazy combo and burst you down. So I think very, very underrated. Yeah, check out those Trap Hunters that people are posting. And then Shaman, mid-range Shaman, I think super underrated as well. It has an extremely weak matchup against Zoo. That's what holds it back. But it has an extremely favored matchup against Druid. I've played it so many times. We've seen people in tournaments, right, that the highest skill level players play that matchup. And if you know what you're doing, Shaman just runs away with it way more times than not. Of course, there's those lucky draws, there's innervates and wild growths, and combo could even be a double combo with the craziest circumstances. But generally speaking, I think across a wide number of games, mid-range Shaman going to put up very good numbers against Druid. It's quite good across the board. Yeah, I would give the edge to Miracle Rogue for sure. But again, it's another one where I think if you're very, very skilled with the list, you can kind of keep that win rate close to 50%, maybe just under 50% for that mid-range Shaman. And I've even seen people kind of build a hybrid aggro mid-range Shaman, because aggro Shaman does very, very well against Miracle Rogue. Mid-range does very well against Druid. And it looks something like, you know, you got Feral Spears, you've got Lava Burst, but you've also got Leper Gnomes and Doom Hammers. And depending on the matchup, you play it a little bit different. So if you're playing against Miracle Rogue, you're sending damage, you're not scared to play anything out. But against a Druid, you know, don't be scared to just hero power and pass. Get value out of your Flame Tongue Totem and hero power totems. and that kind of equalizes those matchups. So depending again on what kinds of players you're facing, maybe you want to cater it a bit more to the rogue matchup if that's what you're seeing very, very high on the ladder, or maybe you can just farm enough druids that you'll be just fine. And there just isn't that prominence of zoo at the top of the ladder. Of course, if it ever becomes dominant, if there's a lot of human zoo players, maybe after all the bots get reported and banned, that's something that we see. Then I think Shaman would slip. But for now, people have hit rank 1. I think maybe have even ended the season on rank 1 or right around there. It's definitely doable. I think highly, highly underrated. And then finally, it's Rogue. Miracle Rogue. Nobody's surprised. What can I say? Incredibly strong deck. I think it does have a reasonably high skill cap. I do think it's a little overstated. I actually think even though you've got a lot of lines to play out with a Miracle Rogue, right? You can play 5 cards in a turn, 8 cards in a turn, something crazy, whereas you could have played these other 5 cards. The thing is, if you could have some sort of evaluation bar, you know, kind of like you do in chess, I think you would find playing these 5 cards or playing these 5 cards, they're both good and they're both probably going to get you to your end goal to win. Usually the high skill cap decisions tend to come from something like concealing your minions, whether it's a Leroy that doesn't get shadow stepped and then you conceal it, maybe an Edwin, a Drake, an SI that you've buffed with a cold blood. You know, you see that, hey, I'm running out of steam, I'm on a clock, I don't have that much time, I'm going to kind of desperation conceal when I need to and push that last bit of damage, hoping that they don't have any kind of removal, like a Brawl that's going to be able to take out things that are concealed. But yeah, very, very good across the board. Yes, it's got some unfavorable matchups against stuff like Freeze Mage. You know, mention some of them here. If you're playing that Trap Hunter, it may be a bit difficult, but you can absolutely get runaway games as well. It's kind of like Druid in that sense. If you get the perfect draw, it's just almost impossible for anyone to deal with. And the thing is, just a lot of what counters Rogue can be countered by other stuff on the ladder. So aggro decks, right? You see aggro Shaman, Face Hunter, Shakadin, they're all very good at bursting a rogue down, but they're so easily countered by other stuff on ladder that those decks will never really rise to prominence to dethrone Miracle Rogue. So instead of that, yeah, you're getting some of these mid-range, maybe hybrid, maybe just very, very teched other classes to try to deal with Miracle Rogue. But not these decks that are very often going to have, you know, a 60+% win rate versus Rogue. So I think it is unlikely that it'll ever really get dethroned. But yeah, I really do think it's a bit of a surprise coming in at second and third place here for what could potentially do it if you don't want to play Miracle Rogue. But hopefully I've, you know, sufficiently pissed off the internet and entertained you guys a bit. So these are my thoughts on what you should be running to get to rank 1 legend. Good luck trying to do it. Try to hold it. Incredibly difficult feat, but yeah, I also highly recommend either in my Discord or the classic Discord. Lots of people who take the game very seriously, kind of push that competitive element further than what you're probably used to just from general laddering sessions. A lot of good decks, a lot of good ideas in there. So if you're interested in actually making that climb, highly, highly recommend getting involved with that community. So yeah, again, best of luck out there.